and I asked my 11 years old son, you must watch it. Your father is going to say something.
Well, that's wonderful. Okay, great. We are on a streaming right now, so that will be lovely for him.
Okay.
Buenos dias, good morning, and welcome back to our fourth and last day of the Fifth Low Carbon City World Forum. I'm very happy to introduce you the person that will join us today for our talk. This is very special because he has been one of the person that inspired us to create low carbon city. Dr. Chong, he is the director of the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development Law and Policy. He's a professor in the Division of International Studies at Korea University and director of the Center for, he's also an international expert on governance and institution building in various fields. His research covers emerging issues in the environment and sustainable development, such as climate change, marine environment, biodiversity, nuclear security, and human security, both at global and regional level. His most recent works focus on low carbon development, institutional building, and how new climate change regime can be built under Paris Agreement and regional environment institutions building in Northeast Asia and capacity building for developing countries. Dr. Chun has appeared in numerous international conferences and meetings hosted by various institutions, including but not limited to Stanford University, Harvard University, Fudan University, Hawassa University in Ethiopia, Mongolian International University, French Institute of International Relations, the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations, Brookings Institution, New York-based Asia Society, and Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. He has also served in the council, the governing body of the Global Green Growth Institute as a non-state member, the UN Basel Convention as the vice chair of the Compliance Committee, and the UNDP and the GIF Yellow Sea Large Marine Ecosystem Project, and the chair of the Regional Governance Working Group. He has also participated in various activities, other international organizations, including the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the Asia-Europe Foundation, the United Nations Office for Sustainable Development, and the Green Climate Fund. He's currently the listed panelist under the Sustainable Development Chapter of Korea EU FTA. And well, I can keep reading his profile and his CV, and who is very impressed. But what I like to say is that while I was his student in Korea, I learned a lot, and he's inspired us to build and to keep and contribute to build the climate governance in Latin America. So I'm very proud and honored to have you here, Dr. Chong. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge. So, well, I welcome you, and in the name of my team and the people that are here with us today, I'd like to thank you for your participation, and welcome to the Low Carbon City World Forum 5.
Thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction. It's my great pleasure, even the privilege, to have a chance to talk about the issue that I planned for today. And then I do hope that my presentation will be a value add to your wonderful event that all of you have been organizing this week. Let me start. Before I start, let me share my screen so that everybody can see my presentation material. All right. So today, I'm going to talk about the building resilience for a green recovery, and then a case of Korea and its implications. So as you may know that we have been experiencing the unexpected, very serious, challenges due to COVID-19 since earlier this year mainly. And then it has caused a lot of issues, not only in terms of how we address this challenges COVID-19, but at the same time, how to realize some of the boosting the economy again after COVID-19 problem would be solved. In the sense that all the topics that I'm gonna touch upon today will be about how you can better understand how to address the COVID-19 and how to reboost the economy based on the climate change and then Green New Deal concepts. So in that sense, my screen got frozen. Yes. And then in this context, we need to first understand what is the relationship between the climate change and then Green New Deal, I would say, or COVID-19. So what is the relationship between the climate change and COVID-19 recovery? There are two aspects, as you can see from the cartoon that I copied from Financial Times. Climate change can be a cause of COVID-19. As you know that due to the increased temperature, we start to see a lot of different diseases, right? And then we can understand why COVID-19 has happened. And then in large context, we can see that due to climate change. So as a cause, that the climate change has some sort of relationship with the COVID-19 phenomena. At the same time, as I said, and this is my focus today for you, climate change has been a solution in the context of the COVID-19 recovery. In other words, in order to boost the economy, what is the very interesting and important issues that you should know and that has been unfolded at the global level is called Green New Deal policy or something related to addressing climate change. So in that sense, climate change can be a solution in the context of how to realize COVID-19 recovery. So there are two different aspects. No matter which aspect you would be interested in, I would like to emphasize that climate change, if you address climate change, you can solve the problem of various kinds of problems of COVID-19. So that's the very important lesson that I hope that all of you would remember from today. Okay, so in the context, I already mentioned about the Green New Deals. Green New Deal concept first appeared during the global financial crisis in the 2007 and 8. So in the context of addressing the COVID-19 and then addressing climate change, these days, one of the key terms that we start to use to a large extent is the Green New Deal concept. And once again, this concept is not new. It appeared before in year 2007 and 8. At the time, in the context respond to global financial crisis. And then many of the ideas were included in the context of the physical stimulus package, okay? And then, looking back, we think that it was largely successful, but at the time, previous Green New Deal policy didn't lead to a significant greening of the economy, as a whole. So there were some of the issues that we had to make up later on. And then at the time that at the G20 level, this concept was largely discussed. Now, as I said, that this year we have a COVID-19 problem, and in a way of post-COVID-19 recovery, then we start to talk about the G20 Green New Deal policy to a large extent again. So in this stimulus and the recovery plans needs to focus on a new, more sustainable, and then inclusive and resilient economy model, supporting a just transition from our current patterns of economic activity. These terms I borrowed here and there, which describes about Green New Deal policy in year 2020 context. And you can see already some of the differences between the previous Green New Deal concept and the current Green New Deal concept. And then once again, G20 this year, G20 will be held in the Saudi Arabia. And then there, I've been, when I look at the current discussions of the G20 agendas, and then realizing the Green New Deal is one of the very important issues. For instance, there is a Science 20 Summit, which is official engagement group of the G20 process. And then tomorrow actually is the day of the Science 20 Summit, where scientists of the G20 member countries will, adopt their communique, where green, health, and digital issues must go together. These are the main technologies and science areas that we should realize in the coming years, mainly in the context of addressing the COVID-19 and even the COVID-19 recovery plans as well. Okay. And also, as you may know, that the European Union has been a leading actor in boosting the concept of the Green New Deal since the last year. So European Union is very important actor at the global level at this time. And then once again, if you would ask me, what is the key point when you say the differences between the 2007 and 2008, the version of the Green New Deal, and now in the global context, I would say there are more needs to assist developing countries in the context of just the transition at the global level. So this is a very, very important point that I would like to emphasize today. Okay, and then next, just a second, right. Now, I'd like to explain about how Korea's Green New Deal policy has been developed. To do so, it's somehow helpful for you to understand what is the history of the climate change policy of Korea. It goes back to the time of 2008 and 2012, when the former President Lee Myung-bak served the president, as the president of the Republic of Korea. And this time, the Korean government introduced the low carbon green growth policy. In the context of the mainstreaming climate change, I would say this was the peak time in Korea when we emphasized the climate change policy, not only at the national level, but also at the global level. One of the examples is that, at the time that Lee Myung-bak administration established the Green Growth Institute, with the GGGI, in other words, with some other key partner countries. Also, it hosted the GCF, Green Climate Fund. It established a very powerful coordinating body at the national level called President Committee on Green Growth. And then there are some other various active climate change policies that I can refer to. And then next, President Park Geun-hye introduced a creative economy policy, where this administration put the emphasis on the ICT and green technologies to boost. And now from 2017, we have current President Moon Jae-in, and then he introduced the energy transition policy. This policy focuses on boosting renewable energy and addressing air pollution, regional air pollution. And then now, these days, from this year, Green New Deal policy has been put in place by Moon Jae-in administration. So overall, we can find some of the consistency in terms of the implementing the climate change policy in Korea. And Green New Deal policy is not just a sudden answer. It is a consequence of the continuous efforts through the different administrations in Korea. So current Korean Green New Deal recovery plans, especially Green New Deal policy, first introduced not a long time ago in May 20th. It's not a long time ago, right? Only several months ago. And then President Moon announced the Green New Deal will be included together with the Digital New Deal as a recovery plan. Currently, Korean government introduced a New Deal policy, which has two pillars. One is digital. The other one is Green New Deal. So Green New Deal is an integral part of the Korea New Deal policy as a whole. And then before May, actually, at the ministry level, and then at some other, individual level, then we could see that there is some, sort of the signals, about Korea may introduce the mainstream the climate change policy sooner or later in the context of addressing the COVID-19 recovery. And then, for instance, in the Peter's Climate Dialogue earlier this year in April, then the Minister of Environment actively emphasized the Korea's potential role in addressing climate change, including green transition, early shutdown of the coal power plants and others. And then he also emphasized net zero policy at the time. And then we had a general election earlier this year. And then the ruling party, before the general election, put a lot of emphasis on the boosting the climate change policy in the context of the recovery plan. So what the President Moon announced in May was not just a sudden outcome, as I have been emphasizing. It has been some sort of consistency in the Korean society. So now, Korea Green New Deal, as you can see, mainly it has 4 elements. Construction in some other cases or context at the global level, this sector refers to building sector, right? And the power, industry, and transportation sectors. So these are the main sectors that the Korean government will focus on. And then they project that about 133 new jobs will be created. That's a very large number in the Korean context. In the, this, right-hand side, oh, sorry, something wrong. Just a second. Yes, in the right-hand side, you can see the, I'm sorry, it's in Korean, but Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, this is about, developing new path for Korea. And that there is a social safety net that's in the context of just a transition, for instance, if I refer to. And then it requires a significant financial investments, and then institutional reform, and some other detailed plans. So it's a very well-organized plan to realize the Green New Deal. And then, of course, there are some obstacles that I'm gonna, explain about later on. But overall, Korea has been on the right track from my point of view. And then, as I said, I want to spend some time to talk about the individual issues of Korea Green New Deal policy. First of all, most importantly, net zero policy. This policy so far has been led by Ministry of Environment. So unless you can calculate how much you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by implementing your Green New Deal policy or addressing climate change, then I don't think you can call any policy as a climate change policy. So in the context, then in Korea, in Korean context, well, still it remains at the ministry level, but at least this ministry tries to calculate how much emissions can be reduced by deploying green technologies, low carbon technologies in the context of Green New Deal policy. As you can see that the power, energy, industry, buildings, transportation, these are the main sectors in Korea to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then I know that this forum may have an interest in cities, so I just wanted to add one slide about the smart green city. Of course, in Korea, cities are very, very active these days in terms of realizing Green New Deal at the city or subnational level. So these are some of the pictures that you can get from any place in the web. And then here, for instance, there is a city called the Dangjin city. This is one of the small cities in the western part of the Korean Peninsula. And then it says that Dangjin style New Deal 5G +1. Meaning that the 5G refers to the 5G telecommunication technology that Korea is very leading. So they want to, be a very leading city, smart, also green. In the context, then then they put the green city, and then green energy, green industry, green mobility, green life, and then smart and safety. So there are 5+1. That's what they try to, develop their own image on what they are doing. So cities are very, very important. That they try to be aligned with, Green New Deal policy of the central government. Central government has never forced them to do so. It's more like a bottom-up, action by the cities, from my point of view. Tangjin City, why is they are very active? Because most of the coal power plants in Korea is located in this part. Tangjin City is in the heart of this very problematic area. So instead of taking all these social blames, actually they developed their leading ideas on, okay, we wanna develop the smart green city, so we can make all these people actually to be free from any health damages, or this city will become one of the best cities to live on. Okay, so this central government's policy says that Korea plans to shut down the 14 coal power plant by 2034, and that's a very significant number. And then it is in the context of the Green New Deal policy, right? Because power sector is very important. And then in order to realize net zero policy, naturally you need to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So shutting down the coal power plant should come first, right? And even in that context, what I'm trying to explain to you is that even at the city level, as I showed in my previous slide, that even there is a coordination, natural coordination, from the bottom up, that to match that. Even at the city level, we want to realize the smart green city, right? Also in Korea, because Korea has a very advanced technology of a hydrogen economy, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy is responsible for this. And then Korea's some motor companies such as Hyundai, they are very active in boosting their hydrogen vehicle, not only domestic, but also international level. So even the Korea developed recently roadmap promotion of the hydrogen economy based on that, not only boosting the car makers production, also some others fuel cell for households and the power generation and the hydrogen production, storage and infrastructure. So this is a very, very advanced technology. I know, for instance, that Korea, actively discussed with some of the partners in Europe, such as France, to have a cooperation on realizing hydrogen economy together. So this is a very, very, world-leading, area where Korean can claim on, wow, in the context of Green New Deal, actually Korea can make some contributions to boost the global economy. However, as I said, there are still challenges to Korea, right? First, as I said, mainstreaming climate change policy is very, very important. Why? Climate change has various aspects of not only environment, but also economy, culture, and then some others. So unless all these different aspects of the actors would coordinate each other, it's very difficult for you to bring the expected outcome to be realized. In the sense that mainstreaming climate change policy is very, very important. For that, head of the government, president or prime minister, depending on your political, organizational structure, he or she must have very much interest in the climate change policy. Under the Moon's administration in Korea since 2017, frankly speaking, up until this May, President Moon, of course, was interested in the environment and climate change, but I was wondering whether he really put the climate change as the top agenda of the country to run. But after a Green New Deal policy was introduced, I have a better view on the Moon's administration's looking at stance on the climate change issues, and then therefore I have a more understanding possibility about the possibility of realizing their Green New Deal policy as planned later on. So, coordinating, mechanism among the different ministries and stakeholders, and then the top level political will is very, very important. In that sense, mainstream climate change policy is the first step that no matter whether you come from developed or developing world to realize Green New Deal policy. Number two, naturally, as I already emphasized, at the government level, interministerial coordination is very, very important. Usually, ministries which are responsible for environment protection, and then energy and transportation, and then cities, they need to work together, right? So this is very important. And then need for a more active role in international cooperation. This is especially important for Korea because, as you may know, the details of Korea has a very small size of the land while having large population, not that much natural endowments, to boost the economy. So from the beginning, if Korea would like to, increase, its economy, then develop its economy, then Korea must, be a trading country. That's what Korea used to do. So therefore, even for Korea, current, Green New Deal policy needs to become more international. And as I explained to you before, actually, under the current scheme of the Korean Green New Deal policy, it's very difficult for me to find out whether or not that this Green New Deal policy of Korea is become a very international. I have some questions, but I'm sure that Korean government will address that later on. But at this time, this is one of the biggest challenges that Korea has in the context of the realizing Green New Deal policy as planned. And finally, always important that it's appropriate, ensuring the appropriate role of stakeholders such as government, organizations, experts, civil society, private sectors, and other related actors, okay? Not only single actor can realize the Green New Deal policy in your country. In the context that this issue also exists in Korea as well, okay? Korea is doing okay, but in order to bring the better outcome, I think still there are some challenges that even Korea needs to address, okay? So no one can be perfect, but Korea is doing okay, but there are some issues. So these issues, no matter whether they are good or some issues inside, always we can draw some lessons. Right here, my final slide says that the lessons for developing countries. I assume that most of the audience of today's event come from the developing countries. I do hope that I understood the context well. So in the sense that I thought about what are the lessons for developing countries. Number one, as I said already many times, climate change can be a main driver of post-COVID-19 recovery plan. You can believe this because I already seen the significant evidences at the global level here and there. Mainstream climate policy is very important. So in order to make a climate policy as a driver of post-COVID-19 recovery, first, you must make a climate policy as a mainstream policy in your country, okay? And then aligning national green recovery plans with international initiatives, such as the UNFCCC process is very helpful, especially for developing countries. Why? Not only to develop appropriate national plans, but also to secure more resources from outside. If you align your national policies in the context of global trend, it's better, easier for you to have a better access to the resources here and there available at the global level. Otherwise, you have to make your own paths to find out them. That's good, but to have a efficient outcome of your implementation of your plans, then I suggest that align your national policies with international initiatives. Finally, resilience, equality, adaptation are important. I emphasized it, right? However, don't forget, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is also important. In other words, that sometimes developing societies, you put your emphasis on adaptation, resilience economy, but then what about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, right? Oh, Professor Chong, my country doesn't emit the CO2 right now, but as I understand, your society would like to grow economy, right, in a sustainable way. Then unless you do be a sustainable way, in other words, low carbon, then when you grow your economy as a middle income country, then you end up with emitting a lot of CO2s, right? So from the beginning, grow your economy in a low carbon way. That's very, very important. So I put two cases of Ethiopia and the Botswana, and then according to my practices and then studies, and then I think what I just said may be correct. Okay, so these are the some of the lessons that we can share for developing countries. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Professor Chong, thank you so much for your presentation and your insights. One of the work that Low Carbon City does is doing some advocacy and connecting governments with citizens and promoting and the work of from academia. So we would love to take your insights to different policymakers and spreading the word from the work that you've been doing. So thank you so much for all your insights. And again, it was great to have you with us in our forum. And I hope it's not too late in South Korea, and we're having you awake at this time. And I'd like to give now the word to Alejandro, our friend, who will introduce us the next panel. So Alejo, welcome back to the forum.
Thank you very much, Juli. It's very nice to be here in this last day of our World Low Carbon City Forum. I think all the input from Dr. Chung was very important. If we consider right now the challenges that we are facing and the opportunity that we have to restructure our economy, this is really a very, very good opportunity to do so. I was talking before with my students, and I was telling them then that against the background of sustainability, we can hardly talk about any developed country. A developed country will be a country that meets all these social needs, all these equity requirements that Dr. Chung was talking about, while maintaining a very good environmental performance. And that's not the case in most of the countries around the world. So it was therefore very, very interesting to see this as an opportunity. And I think that in our next panel, we are going to have the chance really to go deeper into these perspectives. Our panel is blazing the trail for a resilient, inclusive, and green recovery. And we're going to have, I'm sure, very interesting insights from very interesting women and very powerful women, which are really changing the way things work. And this panel will be led by Natalia Lever. Natalia is the Regional Director for Latin America and Mexico of the Climate Reality Project, and she will present the panel. But I want to introduce her. Natalia is an expert in sustainable development and defender of the environment. She has studies in international relations and environmental education for sustainability. And she has worked in different areas of environmental education, renewable energies, and green technologies. And she currently works as Regional Director for Latin America and Mexico, as I said before, for the Climate Reality Project. So Natalia, you're very welcome, and we're very happy to have you here. We're gonna need here some help. Okay,
hello?
You're in mute. Hi.
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you, Alejo. It's an honor to be here with you today in this forum. Sorry that I am in the car. I had a little emergency. So it is my pleasure to present this important panel. One of the things that this pandemic has showed us is that we can really transform rapidly our ways of how we how we move, what do we eat, what are the things that are important in our societies. And as we were listening in the last panel, tackling climate change and tackling this pandemic can go hand in hand. And let's not forget that the loss of biodiversity that is importantly being increased by climate change is a very important factor for this pandemic. And if we want to, if we don't want to see something like this happen again, we need to start tackling climate change. So the objective for this panel is to promote a conversation about the opportunities for a green and resilient growth, and the importance for the citizen participation, because we all have a responsibility for tackling the climate crisis, and also to be responsible on how do we respond to the future growth of our economies. So I am going to present our amazing panelists. They are 4 women in the private initiative that are invested in the sustainable and impact investment arena. So they are going to talk about for 10 minutes about their projects. I'm going to present each of them while they are talking, and at the end we're going to have a session where we are going to have some questions for them on their views. Well, first, Kalima Kumari Drake Kim from the USA. She's the executive director and founder of Easy Change. Easy Change is dedicated to connecting communities with each other and their changing environment. Drapkin created Easy Change after more than a decade as a reporter covering natural disasters and the science of climate change worldwide. Easy Change is a civic resilience platform for communities to collect and share their own personal climate stories, photos, and climate measurements. This real-time data is combined through sensors, networks, and natural language processing to illustrate climate trends at community levels. Cities, engineers, insurers, and researchers use this data to inform people about climate change adaptation, planning, public safety, and infrastructure design, allowing them to create solutions that work best for communities. She's currently a member of the board of directors of the National Federation of Community Broadcasters and is a consultant for the think tank Resource for the Future at NASA. Before journalism, Julia researched anthropology and archaeology for more than 7 years in Latin America. So please, Julia, tell us about your project and how can we become involved as citizens.
It's an honor to be here, and thank you so much. I'm going to share screen and hope that it works. Let's see. Well, maybe who can share it? Well, I'm trying to share my screen, but I don't know how. There we go. Hello. Excellent. All right. Can you all see that? All right. I'm assuming that you can.
We can see.
And thank you again for setting the standard for multilingual translations. I see change. It's like yo veo cambios is basically empowering us as individuals and as a collective to see changes, point to them, and make them. And in this conversation around this very critical moment, 2020, this moment of global change, we're talking about what do we do? What are the solutions? And the Green New Deal, as we just heard, is now a global idea. And a lot of that is rooted in the American history around infrastructure and the Green New Deal that happened in the history of our country, and how to restart the economy. And I want to kind of zero in on that idea of what is infrastructure. When you break it down, it is basically the physical and organizational structures needed for the operation of society. So we think of infrastructure sometimes in physical things, bridges, buildings, grid infrastructure, power, electricity, but it also includes education. It also includes healthcare. It includes like the very fabric of how we organize ourselves. And I see change focuses on climate and infrastructure as part of the things that we need to change. And I think all of us are coming up with new Venn diagrams around how we organize what just happened to us in this last year. And I think of a critical aspect of that is inequity as a blocker with regards to how we solve for COVID, for how we solve for climate change, because it impacts the movement of resources and power across these critical aspects of the solution space. So I just want people to everyone's kind of conceptualizing, how do we deal with these multiple crises? And I think there are ways to think of actors and blockers, as well as outcomes. So I see change, again, we mobilize community stories and data to inform climate adaptation, infrastructure design, and emergency preparedness, increasingly even mitigation solutions. We are connecting people to their changing environments together and kind of operating in this space. We're crowdsourcing the information that is missing and the voices that are missing when it comes to making decisions, critical decisions about our future. So we have people all around the world using I See Change, creating public records of their lived climate and weather experiences. They're building evidence and awareness about how each of these stresses impact them individually, because everyone is experiencing a simultaneous stress in different ways. And that is critical to understand those differences. And we are adding insights into projects that we know are going, are actively being pursued at a local level. So I'm just went into the feed to see where our latest posts on I See Change from South America. And we found this from 2 weeks ago. We understand and appreciate that South America and Brazil is having just as much wildfire impacts and air quality impacts as North America these days. And there are other areas around the world experiencing the same, and really connecting that experience to each other across the world, our individual experiences, our communal experiences, and our global experiences. I do feel sometimes you find poetry in these posts that really really emote, because our experiences with the environment are just as emotional as they are physical. And I think that nature goes sad is a really intense feeling that we're all experiencing. Also on I See Change, I found a solution, quote unquote, documented on I See Change. We do not believe in doom scrolling. We want to have a space where we can talk about solutions and debate them. I cannot vet this particular method as viable, but someone presented it as an idea. And when we talk about climate change, there's a lot of people in different places trying to come at a similar solution. And not all solutions are great. Not all solutions work out for any one person or any one demographic. And there needs to be a safe place to have public debate. And this is a cultural thing. Every country has its own civic spaces for engaging publicly on decision making. So I do think that not all of those solutions are great, but we should all come to the table and debate them civically in safe ways, because when you engage, the social science suggests when 51% of people are willing to change their minds when they are engaged in public deliberation with their peers. Social media has not been great for that. So I do challenge even my own company to find better ways to do this. We usually write stories about what the community is posting about, and we interview our residents, we interview scientists, we interview policymakers, and that's one way we leverage that experience. But we are playing with different ways of doing that on the platform in 2021. Using I See Change is as easy as your traditional social media, but we do use the stories and the data for good. And you can report on the topics that matter with you. We combine the qualitative data, your stories and your photos, alongside quantitative data that is missing. And it is missing. When cities, engineers, planners, people at very high level are making decisions top down, they're using modeled data that is already out of date the day it is created. Satellites and sensors are not granular enough. And more importantly, they are lacking context to be able to make decisions, which is critical in these processes. often the people who are most impacted by climate change do not have seats at the table, not because they don't want to, but because they got other things to do. Civic engagement is a luxury, and a luxury that needs to be affordable. We need to have more voices at the table. And without those voices, we miss critical details. These insights really allow us to take the money that is being spent and target it, make it most efficient, and evaluate whether or not it actually worked. So this is the kind of how it all works together. We have users coming to and residents coming together, sharing their stories, their impact details. We analyze and aggregate, and then we collaborate with all of the stakeholders in the space to come up with better, more targeted solutions. We've done this in the United States, primarily. We've worked with communities on the coast of New Jersey who are modeling both sea level rise and rain-fed flooding. They are evaluating the things that are working, and they are advocating for more of those things, and actually recruiting their neighboring towns to join them on IC change. In New York, we worked in public housing to document urban heat. And we put sensors inside people's apartments and public housing and learned that people were sneaking in air conditionings into those apartments because it was devastating the kinds of heat that they were experiencing. We modeled indoor urban heat waves, and they are very different than outdoor urban heat waves because buildings trap heat. And therefore, when the National Weather Service issues a heat alert, they're doing it too late for these communities. Those heat events were happening 3 or 4 days before a heat event and up to a week to 10 days after a heat event. So understanding that every person's experience with weather and climate is different, and the solutions that you leverage needs to be more targeted. In New Orleans, we gave residents rain gauges to monitor the intensity of rain events and the flood levels they were experiencing, and proved that the city's models that they were using were underestimating the flood impacts. We saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in redesign for these multi-million-dollar HUD-funded infrastructure projects, and we're able to double the flood capacity of the designs, adding $5 million worth of additional storage for this particular neighborhood, who would have, under the federal guidelines for how flood mitigation work is awarded, they're too near. We put more protection where there is more expensive property, and so this community was getting less of the share that they needed. So yeah, we have lots of people from every level of the stakeholder who are, enjoying what we do and seeing the value of it, from the city level, the engineers who are saying that we are actually better than satellites and sensors because we help them identify the problems more efficiently. And residents who didn't care about flooding, who had almost given up, starting to notice it over time and saying, you know what, yeah, this does bother me. This isn't right. I want to do something about it. It is so simple to slip into a space of apathy as these events become more normalized. We normalize climate extremes in a window as narrow as 2 to 8 years. So suddenly that pollution in Sao Paulo that is so sad becomes the new norm. And we must fight back against that. Again, this is a detailed view of how we add quantitative data alongside our qualitative data. We are not Facebook. We actually use this data and for good. And we actually are trying to be as accurate and objective about what is happening as possible. We are adding heat and air quality data entry onto our investigation. So you'll be able to measure PM 2.5 or temperature data differences with local sensors. And I want to spend a little time on heat because I think it is one of the universal threats that is undervalued in the adaptation space. Yeah, right on. Thanks, Alejandro. It is one of these global threats that really is one of the more wicked problems we've ever approached, and I think it's even more wicked than air quality because it's an invisible heat threat that really impacts the entire body, and human beings physically have very few mechanisms to mitigate that heat exposure. We can't take off any more clothes. Unlike cold, we can put more clothes on. Heat impacts the body, and the way global climate change impacts the earth. It impacts every single one of our systems. Certain medications don't work at certain heat thresholds. Our mental health starts to break down at heat thresholds. And if you have any underlying conditions, they're exacerbated by that kind of heat. And people are all over the world experiencing it and posting it on Icy Change. So I do appreciate, it's one of my favorite kind of global unique experiences that we're all sharing together. This is from Nigeria. This is Malaysia. And this is New Orleans, where we have elderly folks kind of experiencing heat stroke as they're kind of dealing with their gardens. We also have people talking about their workplaces. Different occupations have different heat exposures. So addressing heat really drills down to that level of exposure. And this is what we're building for. We're starting to sync Icy Change to local sensor networks so that we can kind of create a much more of a dialogue around heat. You heard in the around the Green New Deal, including the Digital New Deal and the 5G networks that are coming to our communities. Well, how do we harness those tools for good? And truly understand those impacts in a dialogue. We believe data can and should be a dialogue, not a surveillance tactic. It is a big, big difference when you engage people in the process versus scrape their data without their permission or their knowledge, because you're missing things. So we have users across the globe. We are actively seeking to grow this community, one person, one community, one neighborhood at a time. And we really want to invite any one of you to join us. Again, our world is changing, and I think the smartest sensor in this change process is still going to be people. And we need to leverage that collective intelligence to make the changes that we aim for. I have a huge thank you to Low Carbon City for helping to translate Icy Change into Spanish. We did that as part of our work in Miami, where we're partnered with the city of Miami, but very soon Icy Change will be available to any Spanish language speakers across the world. Please come check us out. Please keep posted. We were updating the platform every week and are so grateful for the invitation. I wish I could have been with you all in Bogota as we had originally planned, but you can find me on Zoom anytime.
Thank you, Julia, so much for presenting us this amazing project. It's really interesting, and it emphasizes the importance of decisions making the science-based decisions, and also including the public on making science and open source, and just helping us communicate what is happening on the ground. Thank you very much, and we will have a round of questions at the end of this session. Thank you so much. I hope everyone here follows Icy Change and starts doing citizen science and connecting. Thank you very much, Julia. Now I'm going to present Jimena Gutierrez, who I had the privilege to know in Colombia. She's the General Director and co-founder of Talento Verde. It is the first and only agency for the management and placement of green jobs in Colombia. She will tell us a little bit about what does this mean. Authorized by the Ministry of Labor and the Public Employment Service. She's an industrial engineer from the National University of Colombia, specialist in human development management and master in organizational human development and master in organizational human development for the EAFIT University. She's a promoter of green jobs at the Just Transition throughout the national territory and researcher of human resources practices that impact environmental sustainability strategies. Please, Jimena, tell us about your project and how can we participate?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Low Carbon City, for this invitation. I'm very glad to be here talking about something I think is one of the most important issues now. Coronavirus has shown us all the weakness in our traditional models of development and in our economies. And it is not just a public health crisis, it is also a social, environmental, and economic crisis. So here comes the question about what we are going to do to recover our economies. But the most important is how we are going to do it, especially when the three dimensions of sustainability are being affected by the context. So I'm sure a green recovery is the answer, is the way. And in that way, we have a lot of opportunities. And one of them is the creation of green jobs. And today I'm going to talk about it. And as I know that we have a simultaneous translation, so I'm going to switch to Spanish to introduce Talento Verde and to answer the questions. And I'm going to presentar. Momento. Ok, listo. Talento Verde, pues les quiero contar ya, Julia.
Hello, Jimena, can you hear us?
Sorry, I'm here again. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. So, can you see anything?
Yeah, we're starting to see your screen now.
But, okay, so now, yeah. So, Talento Verde realmente lo que hace es buscar y desarrollar el talento para la sostenibilidad ambiental en Colombia. Y en ese proceso, pues somos la primera y única agencia de gestión y colocación de empleos verdes que tiene Colombia, y somos autorizados por el Ministerio de Trabajo y el Servicio Público de Empleo. Nuestro objeto social realmente lo que busca es alinear tanto los objetivos como de desarrollo sostenible como a nuestro deseo de promover un trabajo decente, inclusivo, y no solo eso, sino que también fortalezca la protección y preservación del medio ambiente. Entonces, pues en línea como con este objeto social, pues nosotros tenemos varios objetivos de desarrollo sostenible que aplican a nuestra gestión. Entre ellos, pues el más importante es el de trabajo decente y crecimiento económico, asociado a todos aquellos que tengan que ver con la protección y la preservación del medio ambiente, entre ellos la acción por el clima. Nuestra operación es virtual, y por esa razón entonces tenemos una capacidad de llegar a más lugares. Desde que nació Talento Verde, nuestra idea era hacerlo de una manera que pudiéramos llegar a más público, pero también que pudiéramos ser como más consecuentes y coherentes con el tema de la sostenibilidad, porque normalmente los servicios de públicos de empleo, los servicios de empleo utilizan lugares presenciales para atender a la población. Entonces nosotros desde el inicio dijimos, bueno, ¿por qué no hacerlo de una manera en que podamos llegar a todo el territorio nacional y también, digamos, apalancar todos nuestros procesos desde muchas, pues desde las herramientas tecnológicas que hay, y entre pues la web. Esto nos permitió llegar a más de 27 departamentos de 32 departamentos que tiene Colombia. Tenemos talento inscrito en estos lugares. No es lo mismo la cantidad de personas versus la cantidad de empresas que ofertan sus empleos verdes, y creo que ese es un trabajo grande que hay que seguir haciendo. Y pues normalmente en el comportamiento del mercado es mucho más la oferta, o sea, las personas, que la demanda, o sea, las empresas. Entonces, bueno, digamos que aquí estamos como Talento Verde tratando de cerrar un poco esas brechas y dinamizar el mercado laboral verde en ese sentido. Y nosotros pues somos unos promotores de los empleos verdes y la transición justa en Colombia, porque no podemos hablar de empleos verdes sin transición justa. La transición tiene que ser justa para todos. Entonces, nuestras líneas de trabajo básicamente se concentran inicialmente en la conexión de oferta y demanda de empleos verdes. Esto es un trabajo que, digamos que incluye los servicios básicos de una gestión y colocación de empleos, que es que las personas puedan poner sus hojas de vida, que las empresas puedan poner sus vacantes y que ellos puedan hacer match entre los perfiles y las necesidades y los requerimientos de esas vacantes. Estos procesos son gratuitos. Al ser agencia regulada, nosotros debemos cumplir con eso. Es una normativa. ¿Para qué? Para que haya una democratización de la oferta y la demanda. Digamos que muchas veces las organizaciones no publican a través de nosotros o a través de una agencia autorizada, y eso hace que se pierda la oportunidad de que más personas puedan ver esa oferta, que se democratice la información. Entonces, digamos que eso es un aspecto muy importante en esta línea de trabajo. Nosotros debemos hacer una gestión empresarial muy grande, que no es solo ven, reporta con nosotros tus vacantes de empleo verde, sino también entender y sensibilizar a las áreas de recursos humanos en qué es un empleo verde y por qué ellos podrían aportar a la generación de empleos verdes en el país, independientemente del sector que sea. Esa gestión empresarial puede ser con sectores tradicionales que también son igualmente generadores de empleo cuando migran a nuevos modelos de negocio, pero también a aquellos negocios verdes que por sí ya, por su objeto social, son principales generadores de empleo verde. Otra de nuestras líneas de trabajo es el fortalecimiento de la empleabilidad en el mercado laboral verde. Nos encontramos una población vulnerable que llega a nosotros, especialmente jóvenes, y así como jóvenes hay muchas poblaciones a las cuales es muy difícil acceder a los mercados, para las cuales es muy difícil acceder a los mercados, y estas poblaciones muchas veces se nos acercan personas que ya tienen unos perfiles con una caracterización muy ambiental, muy para la protección del medio ambiente, pero hay otras que simplemente quieren cambiar su horizonte, quieren hacer una nueva carrera en donde haya un propósito en lo que hacen, una carrera laboral verde o sostenible. Entonces nosotros aquí ofrecemos un servicio que es de orientación laboral, es un servicio que también debemos hacer gratuito por nuestra regulación y que es abierto a todas las personas y el cual hemos utilizado también la tecnología, la web, para poder hacerlo más masivo. En este espacio, pues realmente lo que buscamos es que las personas encuentren ese propósito, ese proyecto profesional que de verdad vaya a aportarle a la sostenibilidad ambiental en adelante. Otra de nuestras líneas de trabajo es el desarrollo de las competencias para los empleos verdes. Talento Verde finalmente se vuelve un hub de información. Tenemos mucha información que nos está llegando sobre el comportamiento del mercado todo el tiempo. Entonces, no solamente sobre la oferta, no solamente sobre la demanda, hay muchas cosas que podemos determinar ahí: el tipo de población, mujeres, jóvenes, discapacitados, migrantes, población víctima, población étnica, ¿sí? Hay bastantes tipos de poblaciones que podemos caracterizar ahí, rangos salariales, bueno, toda la información importante del mercado. Pero, ¿qué hacer con esa información? No se puede quedar solamente en el papel. Realmente nosotros lo que hacemos es como tomar un rol más activo, y si bien nosotros como agencia no tenemos la capacidad de desarrollar las competencias técnicas, sí podemos conectarnos con proveedores de formación formal o no formal también, porque esto es válido en este contexto para el aprendizaje. Para que proveamos esas competencias que identificamos en el mercado, en las vacantes que nos ponen los empleadores verdes, para que podamos desarrollar esas competencias. Es muy triste muchas veces cuando llegan unas vacantes en ciertos sectores que es muy difícil cubrirlas, en donde aplica una o dos personas. ¿Por qué? Porque no hay suficientes competencias técnicas en ese sector. Un ejemplo puede ser de energías renovables. Muchas veces pues piden algunos perfiles que de pronto son más especializados y no tenemos las suficientes competencias para poder aspirar a eso. Otra de nuestras líneas de trabajo es la gestión de alianzas para proyectos especiales de inclusión laboral. Realmente eso también va muy de la mano de esas cifras que les decía. Nosotros hemos identificado, por ejemplo, en el caso de Talento Verde, que hay una población muy característica que son los jóvenes. Esto se explica porque obviamente el desempleo juvenil es alto, esas variables las conocemos en los mercados tradicionales, pero adicionalmente pues también son una población muy preocupada por estos temas ambientales, ¿cierto? Entonces digamos que por eso es una población que tenemos ahí identificada, pero también tenemos jóvenes, mujeres y a veces muchas personas con muchas barreras, no solo el hecho de ser joven, de ser mujer, sino también discapacitado, de ser víctima o de ser migrante. O sea, se juntan todas esas barreras para acceder a los mercados laborales y en ese proceso, pues nosotros no queremos tomar también un rol activo y gestionamos alianzas con proyectos especiales. En este momento estamos, de hecho, lanzando un proyecto que es para jóvenes, se llama Jóvenes Talento Verde, en el que buscamos realmente reducir esas barreras de empleabilidad que se le presentan a los jóvenes para aspirar a un empleo verde. Y en ese proceso, pues, podrían integrarse muchísimos actores. No solamente una gestión de talento verde, yo creo que las alianzas es muy importante en nuestro caso, porque atendemos mucha población y con muchos frentes. Y ahorita les voy a hablar un poco de esos actores, ya vamos terminando. Y finalmente, otra de las líneas de trabajo es una asesoría en un modelo de gestión que se llama Green Human Resource Management, o el modelo de gestión verde de los recursos humanos. Es porque realmente está demostrado que recursos humanos, las prácticas de recursos humanos tienen un poder grandísimo y apalancar las estrategias de sostenibilidad en las organizaciones. Y esto no solo incluye procesos como la selección del personal, identificar esos potenciales empleos verdes o empleados verdes, sino también incluye procesos, por ejemplo, como el desarrollo, la formación, como la gestión del conocimiento, como la compensación, como la gestión del desempeño, y en general también la construcción de cultura. Entonces, digamos que aquí tratamos como de hacer un abordaje ya como con las organizaciones, sobre todo de sectores tradicionales, para que desde sus recursos humanos puedan gestionar la sostenibilidad ambiental. Por último, pues nuestros actores claves, como les decía, son el gobierno local, regional y nacional, no solamente como entes reguladores, porque ellos son quienes nos vigilan y hacen seguimiento a nuestra gestión, sino también porque son quienes generan las políticas públicas que van a, de alguna manera, incidir en el mercado laboral. Entonces, por ejemplo, allí tenemos los ojos puestos en que generen una política pública exclusiva de empleos verdes, y eso nos va a ayudar muchísimo en nuestra gestión. Actores también, como les decía, que en la gestión empresarial tenemos que ver es negocios verdes, empresas de sectores tradicionales, un acompañamiento muy especial y un trabajo muy cercano con emprendedores verdes o emprendedores sostenibles, porque son nuestros futuros empleadores. Si bien ahorita pueden no estar teniendo la capacidad de generar empleo, ya hemos tenido experiencias en que algunos de los emprendedores que hemos acompañado nos están generando empleo en este momento. Con ciertas alianzas y con ciertos procesos que hemos llevado con ellos. Agencias de cooperación internacional o pues, organizaciones que cooperen con los proyectos son súper importantes, los donantes de los recursos. Y otras agencias de empleo, por ejemplo, tuvimos una feria de empleos verdes con COMFAMA, que es uno de los patrocinadores de este foro. COMFAMA es una agencia pública de empleo, nosotros somos una agencia privada, pero ambos del servicio público de empleo, y unimos esfuerzos para hacer una jornada, la primera feria de empleos verdes, en donde más de 208 personas se pudieran conectar con un empleo, fueron 208 plazas, y eso pues impacta a 208 familias. De la misma manera hicimos una feria de empleos también a nivel nacional en alianza con la Organización Internacional del Trabajo en el marco del Pacto por los empleos verdes y la transición justa. Y finalmente también las instituciones educativas se vuelven un aliado estratégico, no solamente en el proceso de generar esas competencias que hacen falta, sino también en el proceso de darnos apertura para, digamos, hacer esa formación para el trabajo, que los jóvenes no salgan de las instituciones de educación sin tener muy claro qué es lo que van a hacer en el mundo laboral, sino que ya tengan previamente pues como unos puntos claves para las búsquedas de empleo, y eso puede ayudar a reducir sus barreras de empleabilidad. Bueno, no siendo más, esto era todo.
Thank you so much, Jimena, for presenting us your project that helps everyday people be included in this transition and to also benefit from tackling the climate crisis and just doing the right thing. Now I'm going to present Ruchi Barma from India. She's an architect and urban designer by training and is extremely passionate about people and public spaces. She closely observes how the public space influences the people and the way they live. She has worked extensively in the area of design-driven and data-driven sustainable cities. with multiple government and non-government agencies in India, USA, Italy, the Netherlands, South Korea, and Ghana, so very diverse and science-driven. She has been associated with Transportation Research and Injury Prevention Program at India Institute of Technology, Delhi. And she has co-authored national city-based guidelines and papers on SDG localization, non-motorized transport, and complete street design for multiple cities. Ruchi graduated with summa cum laude in architecture and sustainable urban design from Politecnico di Milano in Italy. And for her vision of equity and happiness, she has been awarded globally as a Dalai Lama Fellow, University of Virginia. She's a 2020 Echoing Green Fellow, a fellow with the School of Social Entrepreneurs, India, and Leadership for Environment and Development. She is a mentor of change in NITI Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission and was selected as Super Mentor in 2019. She loves traveling, exploring cities and public spaces in her everyday life. Thank you for being here with us, and please tell us about your project and how can we be involved.
Hello, everyone, and it's so good to be here. Thank you, Low Carbon City, for transcending boundaries and making sure that climate change events can happen without traveling as well. So that is a very big plus point. And I'll now go to my presentation. I'm just looking at something which is very relatable to all of us. And please let me know if this is visible. And I can start. If someone can just let me know if this is visible.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, great. Right. So a little bit about Humankind. Humankind is actually an organization we are building so that we can build a new humankind. And this whole understanding of building a new humankind is on the innate values of kindness and compassion. Our beneficiaries and our participants, or our co-designers, who we call, are all children, where we are trying to mainstream their needs as equals, build trust in our communities, and create lasting impact and happiness. The core area, what we are looking at is giving voice, visibility, and agency to young humans to create intergenerational action. So I would like all of us to just pause here and just take a deep breath and just look at what the world around us is. We are surrounded by people, and we are surrounded by their everyday stories. And in these stories are stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of interconnectedness, happiness, and health, and hope. But with climate change, life has been throwing curveballs, and now very often. Cities and their people both actually have been facing adverse climate change effects. Poverty has been increasing multifolds. And when I talk about actual well-being, it is inundated with hostility. We have data and statistics everywhere shouting crisis, but since more than a decade, what we've done is not enough. And then came the global pandemic, where this was not only just a health crisis, but it became a humanitarian one as well. And often this hit everyone, you and me, but most importantly, it hit people who were part of these everyday stories, who built our everyday stories, people who built our houses, people who feed us daily, and people who sacrifice their basic joy to make our ends meet. In fact, in India, the pandemic actually made all of them so visible that we understood that we live in a more imperfect world than we believed. There are multiple inequities and distortions that we are living in, and everything was so superficial that the invisibles had to become visibles. And So we keep talking about our young humans, that they actually have been observing all of this, and now even more. They have already been rendered invisible, forgotten, and locked down. And this is not just part of this pandemic period. It has been happening since a very, very long time. What has happened because of that is not making them equals has led us to look at such statistics. In India, 14% of the carbon emissions come only from the transport sector. The carbon emissions in the cities are ninefold than the ones in the rural communities. In fact, let alone the statistics which are at a broader sectoral level, what matters is the everyday life. And 45 children die daily in India only due to road accidents. Mothers are screaming that they are smoking. Children are smoking about 7 cigarettes daily. From infants, it's about 20 cigarettes daily. If that is not enough, I would like to just highlight in India, about 34% of the population is now below 18, those who are living in the city. But do they have a voice and say of the environment they're living in? And in India, most of our population choice. So in this case, if we have to just envision what kind of human beings are we building, or what kind of humanity do we have amongst us? So here I would like to start with the story of our neighborhoods and our everyday lives. In our lives, I often feel scared when I'm on the road. In my life, I always walk to school because I feel scared because they are not carts, but cars like they were in our villages. And because I am poor and I don't have all these assets, I have to go to different parts of our neighborhood to meet our needs. So what I see is we have urban neighborhoods, but we have invisible stakeholders. We all have equal dreams, but we are living in unequal spaces. And as we build a path for resilient and post-COVID recovery, my only ask is, can we build back better with children, with our young humans? Because there is no option. We are trying and we should be able to give them a voice, visibility, and agency to create equity and compassion, which is barely missing in our cities. So just taking you to what humankind does, we actually have to co-design a safe and democratized space to their own school. And often in our workshops, we hear from them that they feel very close to death when they come to school. And they don't have to be transport planners to tell us that if cars would be more fast, then nobody would be roaming on street. We use simple data. We don't, we look at intelligence rather than data. And we look at what they observe and how they feel in their everyday life, in their everyday journeys. And all of this is synthesized when they all group together and clearly list out what they like and what they don't like. Their aspirations start coming out, and uh, they actually then start becoming administrators, storytellers. Their personality starts shining out, and they demand. Um, okay. They demand that what do they want. So a bare minimum street should be colorful, should be safe, should have spaces for their mothers, should have toilets because they don't want to see people defecating openly. They want color with flowers and not color with plastic containers. They want people to support them in their journey. And this ask is what is taken to the every member of all the communities we are working with. So we take it to first the parents because they are the caregivers. We then take it to alumni because the alumni was a student earlier and now they are the people who can vote. And then we take it to the decision makers who definitely in our case had supported our project and endorsed it and gave us this whole opportunity to take it towards implementation. And in each of these projects, the children just don't have a part where they are only designing. They are part of it all. They're part of the implementation process. They're part of the design process. They're part of talking to all the stakeholders. So in a way, they try to understand how does our community respond to our needs. How do we make our voices stronger. And what we understood from our system is we were actually activating ecosystems. We were activating school as an ecosystem in this case, with co-designers, with volunteers who were majorly mothers coming from nearby areas, working with the whole school, working with parents, nearby residents, and the decision maker. And when this gets constructed, it's going to automatically impact over 4 schools. The entire street length is 250 meters, but it would be the first space in New Delhi, which has been designed by children and implemented by children as well. And altogether, it will improve 8,500 or 10,000 children's lives in a single span of their student life. While we work at a very grassroots level, we are endorsing the international mandate. And it ranges from actual indicators where we are saving lives to building peace. What happens is when you start doing that, such projects become catalyst and work at a very higher level. But what also happens is we directly embrace human rights. And when human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, they are happy. They share this happiness. And what I want to just end with is few points as we build resilient and post-COVID recovery. Please remember that we need to see each other as equals. Equity has to be the norm that has to be shared with people and biodiversity. Remember, all our projects are working on an intergenerational action with intention. Don't just hear, listen, because future proofing only comes if people listen beyond words. Participation is not enough. Professional skills have to be a service. At the end, we need to uplift people with co-design. Don't just create city projects, create their everyday stories. Think of the user in mind, because in our world now, humanizing cities is very, very important. And at the end, don't just create urban assets. They are not infrastructure like Julia just mentioned. They should be tools to reduce this wide equity economic gap we have. And we need to use infrastructure and our urban assets to unlock catalytic ecosystems. So often we actually see that we are working together, but actually don't try to make people participate. You need to seek their wisdom, because at the end, a person is a person, no matter how small. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi, for this beautiful presentation, and that also helps us getting us in the right mindset. From where do we want to take action, and what is really the society that we want to build? Not only more sustainable, but also with a better life purpose. And these types of projects really help us achieve that goal. Thank you very much for your work and for sharing it with us. If you want to know about the Humankind Project, you can go to the chat. Thank you so much, Ruchi.
Thank you, Lokavan.
Now I am going to present Sandra Kwak from USA IT. She is the executive strategist and systems thinker. She's applying disruptive innovation to create a regenerative future. Before launching TenPower, she scaled up AutoGrid from prototype to a global brand, creating automated intelligence out of big data from the smart grid. Prior, as co-founder, president, and COO of energy efficiency company Power S.A.S, she brought building management hardware and software tools to market. Sandra has also served as CEO of a software company producing the world's first mathematically lossless video codec. She worked at Pacific Gas and Electric implementing the Climate Smart program and has consulted with clients, including Mitsubishi, the Transamerica Holding Company, and the San Francisco Foundation. Sandra has an MBA in Sustainable Business from Presidio Graduate School and a BA in and Visual Art from Emory University. Thank you, Sandra, for being here, and we're eager to hear about your project.
Thank you for having me. Buenos días, amigas y amigos. Y voy a presentar en inglés porque es un poquito temprano aquí en California. And I'm going to share my screen right here. Let me know if you can see it.
We can see it.
Bueno.
Sí, te vemos, Andrea.
Okay, gracias. I like to start presentations with a land acknowledgement, and I'm here in San Francisco, California right now on unceded territory of Ohlone people. So this is my company. We are called 10 Power, and 10 Power is on a mission to provide 100% renewables to 100% of humanity by the year 2050. Currently, we're focused on project development and finance for commercial scale solar in places that don't have access to electricity. So our very first market is Haiti. And I've been working in Haiti since 2015. In Haiti, we're focused on partnering with local Haitian solar installers with a gender empowerment lens. So we're training women and men from the community to install solar on places like water purification facilities in UNICEF Haiti. And we're working to build a green economy to provide a path for sustainable development. Now, I see energy as one of the key building blocks for every single other aspect of clean development, from survivability, providing access to clean drinking water, through critical healthcare services, especially through the pandemic, to regenerative agriculture, access to global markets, education, events like we're having right now today. We wouldn't be able to access the internet and computers and talk to each other if we didn't have electricity. And then going up the ladder of self-realization and achieving higher goals. One of the projects that 10 Power did in Haiti in 2018 was a solar project for UNICEF Haiti's headquarters. And this was a 130 kilowatt solar project with 244 kilowatt hours of battery, basically a pico or nanogrid. And at the time of completion, this was the largest solar installation on any UNICEF base in the entire world. We're especially proud that this project happened in Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Americas and the 7th poorest country on the planet. And for us, this project demonstrated that places like Haiti can be leaders in sustainable development and can really showcase a direction that development can take for the entire world. And I especially believe that with the accelerating impacts of climate change, frontline communities will be the places where we're able to innovate the fastest because of the urgent need, and that there will be a lot of technology transfer that's happening from south to north. Recently, we completed a solar-powered desalination plant in conjunction with Give Power, which is SolarCity and Tesla's nonprofit. And Haiti is shaped like this, and we completed this project on the island of Lago Nave, which is right in the mouth of Haiti. We continued our women's solar installer training program that we started with Haiti Tech University, which is a leading technical school in Haiti, funded by the Solar Electric Light Fund. And this project was actually completed after the pandemic began. And so it was very difficult getting inventory into the country, making sure that all of the workers had PPE, getting out to the island, keeping everyone safe. And we're incredibly grateful for the bravery of our team to be able to complete this project to provide clean water for the people of this island, which is especially important with the COVID crisis happening. And to us, it's really important to make sure that there's gender empowerment and gender parity throughout the workplace. So our team at 10 Power focuses on gender parity and diversity. We also work with our customers and then of course our installer partners. And so we've been working to encourage more women in the workplace and to make sure that there's equal opportunity training. And then of course, capacity building as a whole for all of our teams on every single project, focused on best practices, standards, international codes, and engineering best practices, and making sure that that skill base resides within the community, so that there's always local people who are working on the project, installing the project, and who can provide ongoing operations and maintenance for the projects. And 10 Power is focused on realizing multiple UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our primary goals are number 1, no poverty, number 5, gender empowerment, Number 7, renewable energy for all. And number 13, climate action now. Now, all of this ties into a theory that I have for change, which I call fourth world development. And I actually presented with Low Carbon City, I believe it was last year at Parque Explora, and did a mini version of my TED Talk, Fourth World Nation Building. And if y'all are interested in learning more, check it out. But here's the brief synopsis, is that we're doing development backwards. So there's this false dichotomy between developed and developing countries, which a lot of the other speakers today have alluded to. But when you get to developed status, do you just stop there? No, we should all keep going. We're always developing as humans. And if it's the same thing with first world and third world, if everybody is trying to be first, what do you do after first? Go to 0 or -1? That's silly. I think we should actually be doing development forwards. And just like tech, going from 3.0 to 4.0 to 5.0, and we should all constantly be moving forward and looking to each other to innovate. You know, like technology, you're constantly getting rid of bugs and doing better releases. And so as humanity, we should be thinking in that direction too, where we're iterating towards a more sustainable and regenerative future. So what does fourth world development look like? Well, big data informatics, learning more about our natural systems and inputs and outputs, like the sensors that I see changes doing, where we're constantly informing ourselves for improvement. Circular economics, donut economics. A lot of the measures that we're seeing implemented during the pandemic and post-pandemic can really take us there quickly. We've shown what we can do as a world when we come together. And I heard a great quote recently in a panel that I was moderating for Climate Week. What if we had had a vaccine for COVID before the pandemic? That everything would have changed. You know, our economy would still be protected. You know, many people would not have died. We have the opportunity right now to create a vaccine for climate change, which is going to be a pandemic of orders greater magnitude and suffering. So we should be leveraging all of our tools with a global effort to take those steps now. Other aspects of fourth world development, renewable energy access for everyone. We're seeing renewable energy grow so quickly in places like Africa and Southeast Asia. And there's really, it's beyond leapfrog. You know, leapfrog says you're going from point A to point C on this trajectory. And I think that with fourth world development, we're going from point A to point theta times 9,000 in a completely new trajectory for growth. Technologies such as net zero energy and closed loop manufacturing. So imagine all of us living in buildings that generate more oxygen than we breathe, that grow more food than we eat, and generate more electricity than we consume, creating a framework of abundance like a tree, where the tree generates oxygen for everyone. It generates way more nuts and fruits to feed animals around it than it needs just to reproduce and carry itself on. And one foundational principle for me is traditional ecological knowledge. I think that our collective advancement as a species is going to trend towards regenerative support and meeting back up with nature when we draw upon the indigenous knowledge that already resides in our communities and combine that knowledge with technological advancement. So what are some barriers to achieving this today? Well, I think that we're in the middle of a quadruple pandemic right now. It's not just COVID. We're also seeing the impacts of colonialism, especially as the movement for Black lives is really sweeping across the world, and people are taking a hard look at race and privilege and the intersections with climate justice and environmental justice. Climate change is upon us. The world is burning right now. It's been really intense here in California, and I can only imagine in Brazil, Australia, and sub-Saharan Africa right now. The fire season's getting worse and worse every year. And the fourth pandemic is capitalism and the rich-poor gap and our obsessive obsession with growth and constant growth. We cannot continue extracting natural resources that are finite and exploiting human labor and our Earth's resources. It's not a good end game, right? We're already seeing how frontline communities are continually oppressed, and it's not sustainable from an environmental or a social perspective. So a huge issue right now with energy poverty and increasing temperatures is climate migration, and the fact that 1/3 of humanity will need to move if we're not restoring our climate. A lot of policy has focused on adaptation and mitigation, but there's also the opportunity to fully restore our climate, and a lot of these solutions are happening on the front lines. But technology and energy is a necessary component in that. And if you look at this map, you can see the places that have the highest energy poverty in the world. And Haiti is the only red dot in the Americas, here where close to 70% of the population has no access to electricity. But what's exciting about this map is that when you overlay renewable energy generation potential, the places with the highest energy poverty actually have the most potential to generate renewable energy. And so we're sitting on top of this massive opportunity, not just to transition to a clean economy, but also to help millions, if not billions of people to aspire towards a different future, to have the resources that they need to be fully empowered, to live their full lives and achieve their aspirations. So another framework that I like to use to look at problems and solutions are going to the root cause of what an issue is. So the symptoms are how the system is being impacted, what people's individual experiences are, day-to-day statistics. But in order to address these symptoms, we really need to go to the actual disease that's creating the symptoms. And that's really getting to the heart of the issue. And right now, as we are looking at racial justice, climate justice, environmental justice, taking a look at our historic beliefs, how those beliefs are entrenched in our institutions, and how community plays out those norms, and how they're represented in the media is really important. And so I think a lot of work that focuses on the root causes of the issues is going to have more of a long-term systemic impact. And a little diagram on how root causes can be analyzed is looking at the various problems, breaking them into components, identifying solutions for those components, taking a systematic approach to solving them, using quantifiable verification, and then taking corrective action. So this is the root cause cycle that you can use to diagnose and start to cure those root causes. And confirmation bias obviously plays a lot into our day-to-day understanding of root causes, especially with social media and the elections coming up in the United States. It's really important that we are constantly checking our confirmation biases, and especially looking at the media and portrayal of climate change. It's crucial right now that we get our media and our leaders to start talking more about climate emergencies and a just transition and what that can look like. So I'm super grateful to everybody who's here today, who's working on that and amplifying their messages out into the world. One powerful statement that I learned from the Sacred Headwaters Initiative is a message that came from the Achuar people at the Sacred Headwaters in Ecuador and Peru at the Amazon basin, where it begins. And the message from the Achuar people is that they said, your people need to change your dream, because the Achuar communicate through dreams. And they were reaching out to people across the world through dreams and sending a powerful message that it is actually the dream of what we today call the developed world that is destroying our entire way of life as a species. And so it is important that what we're focusing on as our dream of the future is something that works for 100% of life on planet Earth. And with that, I invite you all to participate in direct action, to participate in solutions on a daily basis, to make changes in your own lives day by day, but also to work on a policy and a corporate level to put pressure on our leaders to make change quickly, because really the time is now. There's never been a bigger challenge for our species in the history of our existence on planet Earth. So thank you all for your work and your commitment, and for having 10 Power here today. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Sandra. Wow, what a great presentation as our other panelists. And I'm very happy to hear you guys talking about not only the technology, but the values that are behind that technology that is going to make this work and actually change the system and the way we treat our fellow brothers and sisters around the world. And if there's no silver bullet to solve climate crisis, but if there was, renewable energies is right at the top of the list. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your presentation. For anyone who wants to know more about 10 Power, you can look at the chat, and you can go there and see how can you participate. And please, for those who live in the United States, I know, Sandra, you're in California, don't forget to vote. We fortunately live in democracies. I believe most of us that were here in this call, we live in democracies, and we need to make that right count. So please vote and help your representatives be accountable and do the right thing, because they also want to do the right thing. They are people just like us, and they want to be recognized and loved and have a good legacy. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask a general question for all of you in the panel. And so most of you talked about community from different perspectives, but community is definitely something really important. And we talked about data and values and inspiration. So what do you think are the most important challenges that helps us democratize those that information and values and the inspiration? Because it seems that we have the solutions, we have the mindset that we would need to be thinking about to just to take action, but it's not getting there. We don't have the sense that everyone or the majority of the people are in this mindset. So what do you think are the most important challenges to democratize not only the data, but the values and the inspiration needed? If we can start with Julia.
Sure. So let's just break this down, the question, a little bit. So democratize the values. When I talk about climate change outside of the United States and in certain communities, there are higher order needs that usually come to the top. And so it's really, there's a couple of communication challenges that I think really embody what we try and do at IC Change. And I will say that with regards to a mistake we made. In 2015, when we first tried to scale IC Change, and I first had a full-time job running IC Change, the opportunity came from NASA. Very exciting. Love NASA, right? But the mission that we were partnered with was OCO2, the Orbiting Carbon Observatory mission. And our vision was, okay, well, let's have the satellite talk to the people about what the satellite's saying, let the people talk back and make a dialogue, it'll be beautiful. And we started to integrate carbon feeds into the feed on IC Change, like alongside your stories, alongside the weather, you would have a carbon metric, a carbon vision of how the planet was changing. It was a fail, huge fail, in two respects. One, what the hell does parts per million mean to me, to you? What is this invisible thing that everyone's talking about? What is this invisible market that we're going to create that is going to be totally flawed because it's an invisible thing, more so than the stock market even, right? So really understanding that climate impact, climate action doesn't have to be about an inaccessible language. It can be broken down to the perspective of my home. In New Orleans right now, when we were talking about urban heat in this last summer, we discovered an overlap between the eviction crisis and the heat crisis. People can't stay in their homes in extreme heat with broken air conditioning, and their landlords weren't fixing them. And there's no protections for those residents when they complain or withhold rent in order to get their landlords to pay for the ACs. And they're staying in hotels because the heat is so bad and unhealthy. So understanding the climate prism with regards to my home and what I can do in my home, which is important, but also never forgetting that it is a structural change that needs to happen alongside the individual change. Because there is disinformation right now around individual actions, my individual carbon footprint. What can I do? Which is manipulating our desires to do things. So yes, we do things. We do things collectively. We understand what we can do, but never lose sight of the fact that there is a collective need, a collective action, structural political changes that need to happen in sync with those. So it is a communication prism that I come at that problem. And really like using stories as data, because that's the way the human brain actually interprets the world. We do not respond to line graphs. We do not respond even to maps, even though I love Sandra's maps, by the way. I loved those maps. But we really respond to story first. It's part of our lizard brain. And that's how we have to kind of manage these decisions. And doing so very innovatively, we can do that. And very simply as well.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, and as long as we can connect with ourselves and we can tell our own story, we can listen and tell others' story. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
One other way to think about it before you end is if you think about climate change at the level of the body or the home, and then the metaphor is there for understanding it at the global scale.
Yeah, thank you. Jimena, what are your thoughts on this?
Ok, pues estoy de acuerdo con Julia en ese sentido de que hay que mejorar la comunicación, cómo comunicamos el cambio climático y estos impactos, porque todavía son muy ajenos para las personas. Particularmente en Talento Verde, cuando hablamos de empleos verdes, se nos vuelve adicional otro reto, porque normalmente no es el tema, el término más conocido, más usual. Pasa con la sostenibilidad, hablamos un poco de que hay que evangelizar mucho todavía sobre el tema, pero es como le llegamos a las personas. Y cuando hablamos nosotros de empleos verdes acá, pues, y hablamos de que están asociados al cambio climático, por lo general el cambio climático lo visibilizamos con el oso polar y todo ese contexto que en Colombia no hay. Entonces, realmente, sí hay que, digamos, ajustar la comunicación al contexto local. Nosotros, por ejemplo, hemos identificado que los osos de anteojos, los osos andinos, están en vía de extinción y son parte importantísima para proteger los ecosistemas de los páramos. Entonces, digamos que eso también es una manera de hablar. Listo, tenemos nuestro propio oso. Aquí también están pasando cosas diferentes, cosas que están poniendo en riesgo nuestros medios de vida. Entonces, digamos que de acuerdo con Julia con el tema de la comunicación, y otra cosa es un poco sensibilizarnos, porque yo creo que normalmente hablamos del medio ambiente o de temas como el medio ambiente como si fuera algo, nosotros no fuéramos parte de ese medio ambiente, ¿cierto? Como si fuéramos como información exógena al sistema que es el medio ambiente. Entonces, nosotros necesitamos trabajar mucho en sentirnos parte del medio ambiente, no ser ajenos a él. En la medida en que de pronto nos sintamos pertenecientes, lo que hablamos de pronto en tu casa, tú tienes un comportamiento muy diferente a como es por fuera de la casa, ¿cierto? En tu casa no creo que estés tirando basura, no creo que estés haciendo cosas pues como para que se vea fea, antes estás haciendo todo el tiempo cosas bonitas, porque te sientes perteneciente, eres parte de esta casa, te ha costado trabajo tener esa casa, pero cuando sales y de pronto tienes una actitud diferente, probablemente tiene que ver con que falta este sentido de pertenencia. Entonces algo muy similar ocurre con estos temas. Hay que aprender a sentirnos parte del sistema, entender que si falla una cosa, fallamos todos. El coronavirus es la muestra fehaciente de eso, es la muestra de que realmente si falla una cosa, fallamos todos. Entonces, bueno, creo que eso sería como lo que tendría por decir. Todavía hay muchos retos en la comunicación, creo que eso es fundamental, pero el contexto yo creo que nos permite acelerar un poco también los procesos, entonces tenemos que tener respuestas rápidas a estos procesos de recuperación económica verde si queremos que las personas de verdad lo incorporen. Esas respuestas rápidas tienen mucho que ver con la comunicación y la sensibilización.
Thank you, Jimena. So we're seeing like the communication aspect as a big democratizer. And Richie?
Well, I agree with what Julia and Mena had said. But what I want to just highlight is democratization, because that is what we work on. It starts with listening. And, you know, if they are not eager to hear, that is where the conversation becomes very difficult. So this very power of listening is what we bring to our communities without any judgment. And then we ask them to literally come slowly on the same page. And by page, I mean literally a drawing, because that becomes our evidence. And we really harness kindness, and we really try to look at the collective intelligence that constructed an adult story many years ago, and currently the 9-year-olds who I work with, their story. And what is the difference there? What changed? What was not done by a 30-year-old or a 60-year-old that the 9-year-old should not repeat? And what is the 9-year-old actually asking and showing you that everybody is my friend? I like the dog, I like the cyclist, I like that uncle. And who are you to put them in, you know, rooms of exclusion? Because for them, everybody is a friend. So there's this mutual, not a transaction, but an exchange. If we start putting heart into what kind of words we use, they're not transactions, they are exchange. It is not just, you know, talking about legacies. There is room for innovation because the future is coming. So we try to open these conversations, and then only democracy breathes. Otherwise, democracy is only murdered in time.
Thank you, Richie. So inspiring. Listening. We need to listen, and not only we think we know what the solution is, but we are this collective unity, and further for us to act together, we need to actually be open.
Just one more thing, that when we go to our communities, we don't go with a solution. So our whole program is like an open container. And let's see, because people are different, their backgrounds are different, their incomes are different, their everyday stories are different. So let's see what kind of world we paint. But we bring them to similar ethical human values. If that is where a common ground can be established, then the skills and the implementation becomes easier and accelerates change.
Thank you. And now, Sandra, can you share with us your thoughts?
Yeah, building on all of the beautiful articulations that have been shared, I love the idea of looking at the world through child's eyes and coming to conversations with a sense of curiosity and wonder. And I feel that that's something that's so important as we're seeing this division, you know, that our society is getting into these loops where we're just reinforcing our own viewpoints. And it's driving us farther and farther apart. It's really important to start bridging that divide. And a great place to begin is just by asking questions and coming from a place of curiosity and trying to understand, you know, what a person's viewpoints are, what a community's key needs are. And by identifying issues that are immediately relevant to a community, whether it's health, education, food insecurity, climate ties into all of those things. Climate impacts every single aspect of our lives. And even for somebody who doesn't believe in climate change, you can talk about the weather, right? The weather is changing, and it's something that impacts us, especially those of us living in more rural areas. And one perspective that 10 Power likes to use is the idea of a humble learner. So any community that we're working with has way more to teach us than solutions that we have to share. And so the true solutions are going to come from the community and from combining all of our knowledge together.
Thank you. You all four are so intellectual and emotionally smart. It's really an honor to be here with you. And now I want to close off with one last question that we would need to answer faster because we have little time. But what gives you hope in this green recovery? Because we have the opportunity to make changes. right now. We are at an impasse, so to speak. So what gives you hope that whatever comes after COVID-19 is better? If you want to start, Julia.
Oh, I think there's a collective moment of reflection that gives us pause enough to maybe give me enough optimism to move forward. And I think it's embodied in a lot of these beautiful thoughts from my co-panelists, understanding that climate communication is active listening, that we need to be listening to all spectrums, the very young, the very old, people who are least likely to speak, because they're most actively and visibly affected right now. So in this moment of pause, when we talk about behavior change, whether it's at the corporate, the government, or the individual level, a change in behavior usually is accompanied with this moment where you break the routine, right? If you think about when people are in the US, and this is a very US thing, we get marketed to go to the gym after the holidays because we've taken 2 weeks off and we've eaten a lot of food. Right. And so what that means is that there's a marketing moment where they've realized, oh, they broke their routine and there's a new routine opportunity available to me at this moment in the year. So I'm going to market the heck out of it. And I think of like just this collective stop moment that just happened, and everyone evaluating their routines, and everyone reevaluating decision making, and everyone evaluating capitalism. That is happening. It is happening at every level. And I think that there is a snowball movement in that. But we must not go back to the normal, and we must resist talking about going back to normal because normal wasn't normal, right? So there is hope for me in that moment.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the good things about what's going on is this reflection that we're able to question. So thank you, Julia. Jimena.
Okay. Bueno, yo tengo una visión como idealista y otra un poco más ya de la acción y más que de lo que tiene que ver con los empleos verdes. Y la idealista es que me imagino que seríamos una sociedad a la que le importa dejar las cosas mejor de lo que están. Digamos que hablar de esa sociedad regenerativa y también de sostenibilidad, ¿cierto? La sostenibilidad por lo general se ocupa de yo qué voy a hacer, sí, pero qué tanto, me pregunto yo, cómo va a dejar el entorno. Un ejemplo muy sencillo es yo voy al parque y cuando voy al parque llevo mis recipientes de vidrio para no dejar basura y pues listo, eso es la sostenibilidad. Pero en el desarrollo regenerativo, pues yo llego a ese lugar, llevo mis recipientes de vidrio, sé que tengo esa responsabilidad, pero llego y encuentro que todo está lleno de basura y recojo la basura. Digamos que es como dejar mejor las cosas de lo que las encuentro. Entonces creo que en una sociedad idealista, y en mi idea idealista después de esta pandemia, es que podamos ser ese tipo de sociedad, que seamos activistas todos, pero activistas no de redes sociales, activistas de acción. Y pues desde el punto de vista de los empleos verdes, yo creo que tengo un deseo muy grande de que esto se materialice más. O sea, el potencial que tienen los empleos verdes de generar trabajo decente e inclusivo es muy grande, pero no vamos a poder percibir esos impactos si realmente no los priorizamos. Y en ese contexto, pues priorizar los empleos verdes significa priorizar sectores verdes, priorizar esa recuperación económica verde. Y otro deseo que tengo, en particularmente en el caso de Colombia, hay algo, y es que la informalidad laboral en sectores rurales es impresionante. Y el sector rural hace parte de esos potenciales de generación de empleos verdes. Y en la informalidad, pues nos generamos trabajo decente. Entonces, también me imagino una recuperación económica en donde entendamos la labor del campesino, la labor del sector rural, que son finalmente quienes en nuestro encierro, en la cuarentena, fueron quienes nos dejaron poder probar un plato de comida. Y creo que eso es lo que quiero, una sociedad más justa para todos y desde el punto de vista del mercado laboral.
Thank you, Jimena, for believing that each one of us really wants to do the best we can in our lifetime. Now, Ruchi, what gives you hope that what comes next it's a better world?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. A child's smile and curious eyes really give me a lot of hope. And that pure heart which looks at everybody as friends I think this is the right time that there are this army of change makers and army of young people who are saying no to status quo and no to business as usual and need to be heard. I think that voice is just getting stronger, and that gives me hope.
Thank you, Ruchi. This is beautiful, and also we can remember when we were children. We also have those emotions within us. So thank you so much. And Sandra, what gives you hope that COVID-19 really can?
The youth voice is so powerful right now, and looking at the rising generations and the activism that's going on across generations currently. There's so much activism happening collectively on a global level, and just movements are growing so quickly, like Extinction Rebellion, you know, the fastest growing movement in history, and divestment is the fastest growing movement in financial history. And we're really seeing that global connectivity is enabling us to collaborate like we're doing today across national boundaries. You know, all of us are joining together to create a better future that we hold in our hearts and we know is possible. And the pandemic has really been a breaking point, and it has broken down society in so many different ways. You know, it's like the fire is happening right now, and we need to push through and be the phoenix that rises up from the ashes. And that's a difficult job. It's a big job. But we are really seeing the cracks in the old system, and it is falling apart. Fossil fuel companies are going out of business. They're declaring bankruptcy right now. We have this opportunity to completely reevaluate what we are doing with our lives. And with all of the race, class, privilege, allocation of resources, conversations that are happening right now, this is a moment for every human to really look at how we spend our time and the hours that we give to our work. Probably the most of our waking hours are in our work. And what is our work doing in the world? So we're at this moment of reinventing ourselves, both as individuals and reinventing our cultures and the way that we are interacting as an entire species.
Thank you to each one of you. It has really been my honor being with such powerful women that truly believe in change and that are making it happen. Thank you to Low Carbon City for giving me this opportunity. And knowing all of you, I hope that we can stay connected, and that the community that connected to this call today also stays connected to this movement that we are building and that is growing. Thank you so much. And I think I pass the microphone to Julie.
I will take the word here, Natalia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent moderation, for the interesting questions. And thank you very much, Julia, Jime, Ruchi, and Sandra. I think your presentations were really mind-blowing, and I'm very happy. I learned a lot, and I'm very sure that people that are here and people that are going to watch these presentations are going to really be engaged in change. I just want to say that for me, it is very interesting to see that this back to normal is not what we really want to do, as you were saying, is we want to build something different, and we are not starting from scratch. We have already seen in your presentations that there is a long road that we have been walking through already. So thank you very much. If Natalia had asked me what gives me hope, I would say it gives me hope to know that there are people like you. So thank you very much for your presentations, and we're going to meet again at 2 p.m. So in 3 hours, we're going to continue with our forum. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.